a reservoir built to hold 254,823 acre-feet of water is down to 9,870. Medina Lake, an hour northwest of San Antonio, is now 3.9% full. The water sits 87 feet below where it is supposed to be. In April of 2025, the water dropped so low that downstream flow stopped completely. But here is the detail that tells the real story. The water did not just evaporate off the top. A big part of it sank straight through the floor of the lake and into the rock below. Medina Lake was built on one of the leakiest patches of ground in Texas, and it has been losing water into the ground for more than 100 years. On a normal month, back when the lake was mostly full, it handed an average of about 3,083 acre-feet of water down into the Edwards Aquifer, the underground limestone that more than 1.85 million people in the San Antonio area drink from. That is the part the headline misses. The lake is not only drying up at the top, it has spent 100 years draining out the bottom into the city's water supply. And right now, there is almost nothing left to give. Texas Hill Country, 1911. A private company called the Medina Valley Irrigation Company starts pouring concrete across the Medina River, about 8 miles northwest of a small town called Rio Medina. When the work finishes in 1913, the result is the largest dam in Texas and the 4th largest in the whole United States. A wall of concrete, 1,580 feet long and 164 feet tall. Behind it, water starts to pool on May 7, 1913, filling a basin that collects runoff from 634 square miles of hill country. It was, for its time, a huge gamble. A private company spent a fortune to wall off a river in the middle of dry country and sell the water to farmers who did not yet exist. The plan was to turn rough brush land below the dam into farm fields, watered through miles of canals fed by gravity. For a while, it worked. The lake filled, the canals ran, and a farming area grew up under the dam that is still there today. When the lake is full, the surface reaches a height of 1,064.2 feet above sea level. The top of the dam stands 12 feet higher than that, at 1,076.2 feet. 4 miles below the main dam sits a second, smaller dam, the Medina Diversion Dam, which catches the water let out in a small holding lake of about 2,555 acre-feet, sitting near 926 feet up, and steers it into the canal. The lake was never built for a city. It was built for farms. Today, it is owned and run by the Bexar Medina Atascosa County's Water Improvement District No. 1, and its job is to move water from behind that dam down the canals to farmers across 3 counties. And from almost the first year, the engineers noticed something. The lake leaked. Water leaking out the bottom of Medina Lake has been tracked by the United States Geological Survey since the dam and canals were finished in 1912. It was a warning sign about what the lake was sitting on. For many years, with enough rain, nobody had to care. For most of the 1900s, the system held. Rain fell on the hill country, the Medina River carried it down, and the lake refilled faster than the sky, and the ground could pull it back out. Then the dry years started stacking up. In 2011, Texas fell into one of the worst single-year droughts in its history on record. Medina Lake started dropping, and it did not bounce back the way it always had. The dry stretch dragged on through 2012, 2013, and into 2014. By May of 2014, the lake hit a record low for the water it holds, the lowest it had been since the gauges started keeping count. Most people outside the hill country never heard about it. A few wetter years bought a little time, but the lake never climbed back to full. By September of 2022, it had only come back to about 7.5%, still nowhere near full, and only a few points above that 2014 record low. Then the bottom fell out again. By the spring of 2023, the lake was low enough that ranchers were running cattle across the old lakebed, grazing on grass that had grown in where there used to be 20 feet of water. In April of 2025, it reached the point that has a name. Dave Mauk, the general manager of the Bandera County River Authority and Groundwater District, said the lake had hit Deadpool. That means the water sat so low that the flow let out downstream stopped completely, nothing flowing out the bottom. The stored water that spring sat at about 2.5%, only a few thousand acre-feet, in a basin built for 254,823. Then came July 4th, 2025. The same hill country storms that brought destructive flooding to the area dropped enough water to push the lake up to a 2025 high of about 6.5%. It was the most water the lake had held in over a year. It did not last. By the middle of December 2025, the lake was back down to 4.8%. By February 6, 2026, it was at 4.4%, with the water sitting around 978 feet above sea level, about 86 feet below where a full lake stands. The day before, on February 5th, the Bandera County River Authority and Groundwater District called its drought stage exceptional, the most serious level it has, and tightened the rules on watering and well use. The Baysar Medina Atascosa District moved to Stage 4, its own most serious step. And as of this week, June 15th, 2026, the lake holds 9,870 acre-feet out of a possible 254,823, 3.9%. The water that filled it a year ago is mostly gone, and a lot of it did not go up into the sky. It went down into the rock. Now pull back from the lakebed and look at where all of this sits. Medina Lake lies in the Texas Hill Country, in the Limestone Hills west of San Antonio, sitting across the county line between Bandera County to the north and Medina County to the south. The Medina River feeds it from the northwest. The water it lets out runs south and east through the canals toward farmland in Medina and Atascosa counties. It sits right on top of the refill zone for the Edwards Aquifer, a strip of cracked, bare limestone that runs along the Balcones Fault Zone across south-central Texas. That zone is where rain and river water sink underground to refill the aquifer. Medina Lake did not just get built near that zone, it got built right on it. When it is full, the lake covers 6,066 acres. This week, the water covers about 722 acres. The lake has lost nearly 7/8 of its surface. What used to be open water is now flats of dried, cracked mud, with old boat ramps that end in dirt 100 yards from the waterline. And the area it covers only tells part of it. When it was full, the water near the dam stood well over 100 feet deep, and the lake reached for miles up the river valley, deep enough to swallow the kind of boats people keep on it. Today, across most of that ground, you could walk from one side to the other without getting your knees wet. As the water keeps dropping, the basin gives up ground that has been underwater for a lifetime. The old path of the Medina River appears again, carved back into the mud where it ran before 1913. The lake is not just shrinking, it is handing back the valley it covered for more than 100 years, the one that was there before the dam. Here is how a lake loses most of its water into the ground. Most reservoirs are built to hold water. They sit in beds of clay or hard rock that keep what you pour into them. Medina Lake is different. It was set down on the one kind of ground that will not hold water, because the people who built it cared about watering crops, not the rock underneath, and the best place to dam the Medina River happened to be one of the worst places to keep a lake. When the dam was built, it was set on top of the Glen Rose limestone and the edge of the Edwards Group, the same rock that forms the refill zone underneath it. Limestone is not solid the way granite is. It is full of cracks, breaks, and channels worn out by water over millions of years. A fault line even runs through the area near the diversion lake. Water does not sit on top of rock like this. Water goes into it. Picture setting a full glass of water down on a stack of dry paper towels. Nobody has to tip the glass over. The water finds the gaps and soaks down and away on its own. The glass empties from the bottom while the top still looks calm. That is Medina Lake on the limestone. Even in good years, even with nobody using a single drop, the lake pulls down into the aquifer. The United States Geological Survey has been measuring that leak for many years, working with the San Antonio Water System and the Edwards Aquifer Authority, using data from across the 1950s, the 1990s, the early 2000s, and again from 2017 through 2022. One water study of the lakes found an average of about 3,083 acre-feet moving out of the lakes and into the Edwards and Trinity aquifers every month when the lake was mostly full. That water is not wasted. It becomes drinking water for San Antonio. The Edwards Aquifer is the main water supply for more than 1.85 million people in Baysar County alone, and most of what refills it comes from exactly this kind of stream and lake leaking across the refill zone. So Medina Lake has always had two drains, drying off the top and leaking out the bottom. As long as the Medina River kept refilling it from above, the lake could lose water below and still stay high. Stop the rain, and both drains keep pulling on a lake that has nothing coming in. There is a floor to all of this, on paper. The built-in Deadpool of Medina Lake, the level below which the dam simply cannot send water out, sits at a height of 912.2 feet above sea level. The lake this week is around 977 feet, still well above that hard floor. But the working Deadpool, the level where there is no longer enough push to send water down the canals to the farms, arrives long before the built-in one. That is the line the lake crossed in 2025. The dam was still standing over water. The water just could not get where it was supposed to go. What comes next is the part that still does not make sense to most people who drive past it. The same leak that is emptying the lake is the leak the city was quietly counting on. The lower the lake drops, the less it can push down into the aquifer underneath it. The thing draining the lake and the thing feeding the city are the same crack in the same rock. For 100 years, that trade looked like a gift. The lake gave up a little water to the aquifer, and the area got both water for the farms and refill for the aquifer out of the same lake. The trade only works while the lake is full. Empty, it gives nothing to anyone. Dave Mauk, the general manager of the Bandera County River Authority and Groundwater District, put the cause in plain words. He has said on the record that it has just been so dry for so long. No single storm broke this lake. A long run of dry years did, falling on a lake that was already leaking into the ground beneath it. If you are finding this useful, subscribe. We cover the water systems holding up the American West every week, with the full picture you need to actually follow what is going on. While the lake has been shrinking, the need for it has been doing the opposite. People keep moving to the Texas Hill Country, keep buying land near the water, and keep counting on a lake that is running on fumes. The San Antonio area is one of the fastest growing big cities in the country, and every new house and field adds one more straw to the same limestone. The effects run outward from the mud in a clear order. First, the lakebed itself. With the water down to about 722 acres instead of 6,066, the fish are crowded into a few shrinking pools, and wildlife has moved in where the lake used to be. Cattle graze on the bottom. Birds pick across cracked mud. The boat ramps and docks that once reached open water now reach dry ground, and the people who live on the shoreline can walk out across ground that used to be 80 feet underwater. Second, the towns around the shoreline. Bandera County built a real part of its income on this lake, on lakefront homes, fishing, boating, and the people who travel in to use them. Those homeowners now look out at a bowl of dried mud instead of water. Land that sold as lakefront is now mudfront. Boat docks sit on dry legs. The boat harbors and bait shops and rental places that depend on a summer crowd are working a shoreline with no water against it, and the county taxes that leaned on all of that waterfront value are leaning on a view of cracked mud. And yet the building has not stopped. A new place called Sunset Resort opened on the lake this spring. Sarah Voss, whose family owns it, said that whether the lake is at 2% or 100%, there are still memories to be made there. People are still putting money into the shoreline of a lake that is 3.9% full. Third, the farms downstream. The Bexar Medina Atascosa district is there to carry water from this lake to farmers across Bexar, Medina, and Atascosa counties through its canals. When the lake hit Deadpool in 2025 and the flow-out stopped, that supply stopped with it. The district is now under Stage 4 limits, its most serious step. For a farm, water for the fields is not a luxury. It is the difference between a crop and a loss. When the canals run dry in the middle of a Texas summer, there is no backup turning on. The farmers are left with wells, with rain that is not coming, and with a lake upstream that has nothing left to give. And there is the river itself. Below the dam, the Medina River used to carry the water the lake let go. When the flow-out stopped in 2025, that stretch of river lost its steady supply. The riverbed the dam was built to control went quiet, fed only by whatever rain happened to fall right on it. Fourth, the aquifer and the city. When the lake is this low, the leak that feeds the Edwards Aquifer slows to almost nothing. That refill water San Antonio quietly counted on, the average of about 3,083 acre-feet a month, drops towards zero when there is no lake left to push it down. More than 1.85 million people in Bexar County pull from that aquifer. They will not lose their water because of Medina Lake alone. But one of the sources of their water has gone quiet. At the exact moment, the whole area is pumping the aquifer harder than ever. Fifth, the wider hill country. Medina Lake is not the only water supply in trouble out here. It sits inside a stretch of central Texas that has been going in and out of severe and extreme drought for years. The lake is just the most shocking example, the one you can walk across, while the same dry pattern presses on wells, rivers, and lakes across the area all at once. Texas has been here before, in a way. Between 1950 and 1957, the state went through what it still calls its drought of record, the worst long dry spell in its modern history. Water rules and lake plans across Texas were redone because of those 7 years. Medina Lake survived that stretch, and it took years of normal rain afterward to refill it. But the water managers of the 1950s were watching a different state. There were far fewer people drinking from the Edwards Aquifer, far fewer wells pulling on it, and far less concrete poured along the shoreline of a lake that loses water out the bottom even when it rains. The drought of record happened to a quieter Texas. This one is happening to a crowded one, with more than 1.85 million people leaning on the same limestone the lake is leaking into. So what would it take to bring the lake back? Not a passing shower. Light rain on this land mostly soaks into dry ground or burns off before it reaches the river. It would take days of heavy rain across the hill country, or a tropical storm rolling up from the Gulf and stopping over central Texas, the kind of storm that can drop a foot of water on the land at once. Without something like that, the lake bed stays open, the mud stays cracked, and the leak keeps doing what it has always done. So the questions stack up over the dry lake bed. How low does a lake go before it stops being a lake at all? If the leak into the Edwards is part of how San Antonio gets its water, what happens to that supply when the lake that feeds it is down to 3.9%? And how do you refill a lake that drains out the bottom even in a good year, in a part of Texas that keeps getting drier? Nobody can answer that yet. The data does not say. For now, the gauge at the dam keeps reading the same kind of number it read this morning. The water sits about 87 feet below the full water mark, under a pale band on the concrete and the rock where the lake used to reach. Cattle pick across flats that were lakebed a few winters ago. The Medina River trickles in from the north with almost nothing to hand over. And down through the cracked limestone, in the dark under the dry lakebed, whatever water is left keeps soaking quietly into the aquifer. One more foot down the face of the dam every dry week, drop by drop, toward the city that is waiting for it.